Good afternoon, everyone. This is unusual time, so you can realize that technology has to help us to get through this hour and a half, 2 hour and a half or so. But this is never going to compensate for a in-person meeting, especially hello and a warm welcome and all those things. But anyway, we have to do that here. So this is an annual event we do every year for the faculty and the stakeholders. This year's format is slightly different. We have 4 distinguished panelists from the university administration in the research area. They will be taking some time to talk about the activity they are doing and how we can interact with them. Then we have a virtual breakout room session. The staff at the Water Center and Water for Food are going to do that at the end. Dr. Yoder from the IANR is going to close it off. So with that, without taking further time, let me put this into the full page mode. So the goal of the retreat is to foster mutual awareness and collaborative research between the NWC and the NU faculty and administrators. And we have a lot of stakeholders also, so we are not discounting them here. They are always a part and parcel of our family, and I will be coming to some of the work we do with them maybe within 5 minutes or so. So again, welcome everyone. So a little bit about our center. It is one of the 54 centers around the country. They were established in 1964 through the Awada, they call Water Resources Research and Development Act of the US Congress. So in a sense, there is a federal allocation of money to these centers. It's small, actually. It started with $6.5 million. It's now $10 million for the 54 centers. We get some amount of money to disperse for water-related research education programs at each of these 54 institutes. But those funds require a 2-to-1 non-federal match, and most centers have been successful in raising maybe at least 10 times more than what they get. So the mission or our goals here are sharing the latest research findings through conferences, workshops, and all the events we do, tours and all those, supporting the research and extension education activities in the campus here. Actually, basically through small grants program, what we do, and working with faculty to go after larger grants. That will be the point of discussion today. Aiding new scientists through mentoring and seed grants, that's again student training research activities. And finally, the training of future water managers, water and education, water and environmental professionals and scientists. Again, that's going back to students again. So in the previous thing, what I said, new scientists, that's basically younger tenure track faculty or people who are just research faculty in the early career stage. We try to help them. So those 4 are the main activities the center carries out. So a little bit of update what we have done in the last 5-6 years. I'm here for 7 years, so we had a 5-year review of the center in 2016. And the Water Sciences Lab, which is part of the Nebraska Water Center, we had a review of the lab in 2014, just maybe a year and a half or so before the Water Center review. So there were some deficiencies in both the review. The Water Sciences Lab primarily had financial stability issues, and those were addressed with the help of Dr. Yoder from INR, and it looks like we are in a reasonably good shape right now with proper staffing and good sample loads going on. But this COVID has really put a dent on the revenue stream generation right now. From the water center side, some of the recommendations were that we need to help smaller colleges, the 2-year and 4-year colleges in the state, in terms of small grants to their students, and which we have been trying to do over the last 2-3 years now, giving small grants to UNK, UNO. We had Nebraska Wesleyan, and there are other colleges also as partners. And then other thing is that taking the load off the director, myself, or Dan Snow from the lab, and asking the mid-career faculty to take some burden on proposal writing for a large collaborative grants, which is happening. So again, coming to this collaborative proposal writing, my role is primarily serving as a liaison with other universities and bringing the competitive partners where the proposal success can be more realizable. And the other point is tapping the UNL faculty leading proposals with other universities. So that's also another thing, that we have to find the right people who are willing or able to take the lead. So I'll give you a few examples. So one thing happened in the midst of the Coordinated Agriculture Project, or the CAP projects, what USDA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, started. We tried to partner with the universities in the Missouri, Upper Missouri River Basin, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, and us. So it was a joint effort. We took maybe a couple of months to prepare a proposal, a $5 million effort with folks from North Dakota State University in Fargo, South Dakota State in Brookings, School of Mines, South Dakota in Rapid City, University of Wyoming's Powell Research Center, and USDA ARS Lab, Agriculture Research Service Lab in Sydney, Montana. It was a decent proposal, but it fell short of funding. But the outcome of that effort was that we were able to connect with a large body of people in those regions. And this also helped us to host a regional water summit a few years back that comprised of the institutes in the High Plains area. Then the other project, what became successful was the High Plains Ogallala Coordinated Agriculture Project, the OCAP project, they call Ogallala CAP project. It was funded in second try. Colorado State had the lead with 7 other universities as partners, Nebraska as one of them. We have a share of about $1 million over 4 years from that project. So the project had 4 components: the modeling, especially the water and climate impact driven groundwater and surface water modeling. Then biophysical needs of the crops and how this available water is going to be useful for growing crops sustainably in the area without depleting the groundwater, and economic modeling, and then the outreach extension. Nebraska was involved in 3 of these 4. And Darren Rodnick served as the lead from Nebraska in the biophysical team. In fact, Erin Hacker, who was a modeling person working with me, that is a good thing also happened, that with her skills, she was able to get a faculty job at our Earth and Atmospheric Sciences department. The other postdoc who worked in this project, Vaisali Sharda, she got a faculty job with Kansas State University last year, fall. So those are 2 success stories. 2 postdocs graduated and they are now successfully employed as the faculty members at 2 contiguous states, the state university system. Darren Rodnick was able to leverage this project with partners from Oklahoma State and Colorado State for a Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, this is called CIG grant, Conservation Innovation Grant, to take his TAPS program to the next step. It's now running in Oklahoma and parts of Colorado. So this really helped to expand. Darren sent me his regrets. He's driving right now, actually, from North Platte to Lincoln, so he won't be able to join in later on. The other project, which is offshoot from the Ogallala CAP, is the CAP name is now changed. Now the USDA calls it Sustainable Agriculture Systems, or SAS. So last year was the first call. We had a LOI written by Erin Hacker. And we asked Karina Schoengold. She really fits into this mid-career faculty. She was really thankful to her to take the lead on this effort, with partners from Colorado State, Kansas State, KU, University of Florida, South Dakota School of Mines and Technology as partners. We provided the logistical support to keep the group together and having the meetings here actually in Lincoln, brainstorming for a day and a half or so. But the proposal ranked in the high priority list. It fell short of funding because there were 9 proposals funded. So they had about 60 or so in the total ask. So there are plans to resubmit this year once the RFA is out. Karina, Erin, and myself have gone through a couple of meetings already. The other successful project was another water cap led by Pennsylvania State University with Arizona State University, Nebraska, and the USDA ARS lab in Maricopa, Arizona as partners. Our share is about $1 million, but we have also 4 or 5 faculty members. The ag economics team, the extension team from actually I can name those faculty, both Dick Perrin and Lillian Pulganiti. Mark Borbach is the engagement lead. Then we have Cheryl Burkhardt, Jason, what is Jason's last name? Then we have Jessica Groskopf, the extension. And then Darren as the biophysics person, and I am kind of the person putting these things together. So this is an interesting project actually. It was highly praised by the review committee with a lot of legal folks in the team, sociology. It's basically the psychology of water use. But they are now in Nebraska looking into a couple of areas, the Central Platte NRD, basically engagement with phragmites and other issues in that area, and the tunnel canal collapse in Nebraska-Wyoming border. So this one is going well now. The other thing what we put together is with University of Iowa. They needed some partners and test sites to use some sensors they're developing for soil moisture and temperature stress. So we have modeler Hai-Sun Yang and Shin Chao from Scottsbluff Panhandle Research Extension Center doing the field trials. And this was funded through the cyber physical systems with funding from USDA and NIFA. So these other collaborative efforts, we worked with computer science faculty, Dr. Ashok Samal, to try to take a youth education and training type program to Nebraska high schools. This is a NET, Nebraska Environmental Trust funded project. This project was 3 years with 1 year no cost extension. There are 16 or 17 schools, high schools involved throughout Nebraska. It's all spectrum sizes. The main thing is the folks living in the rural areas basically to know that what is the quality of their well water and what are the factors that affect well water contamination. So basically the students are asked to collect ancillary data and interpret this so that they understand how the well water can be contaminated with anthropogenic factors or land use factors around the well. So they were supposed to collect the data and upload through a app to the central server here in UNL. And we made some scholarship arrangements with the INR. If any of these students joins an academic department of INR, he or she is going to get a $500 scholarship, and there was some matching offers from NRDs also. Then we tried to expand this into 5 high schools in the basal groundwater management area, as the acute groundwater issues are prevalent in that area. That got funded with support again from the trust, environmental trust. Now this project, we tried to diversify. We brought in UNK as the lead from the academic side to work with Papio Majori NRD, who is taking the lead in submitting this proposal with 10 other NRDs as partners. There is a lot of financial commitment from various entities, including from us, and the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy is putting close to $200,000 to take this to almost 40 or 50 schools in the state. There are about 150 schools with FFA type chapters. So we'll see how, and there was so much interest, and people gave standing ovation to these kids in our last year's meeting in Norfolk. So this has really touched the hearts of people throughout the state. Other support to the faculty, what we have done, there was a significant push in the state. There is a governor's task force on soil health. The folks who are in that committee, they want to see something good happening. So Chris Proctor from agronomy took a lead to put an RCSCIG type grant, $2 million request. We'll see how that goes. That's still pending. I think probably he's going to find out towards the end of the year. So Crystal and other staff members here provided a lot of help to put the right people, and there are a lot of other faculties that are also involved. There's a new proposal to Nebraska Environmental Trust. Darren Rudnick put particularly trying to initiate a TAPS, the Testing Ag Performance Systems project in Northeast Nebraska. There are 4 NRDs involved and a lot of industry partnerships. And then there are some industry collaboration projects going on with NET funding. That's at the Mitchell Farm at the Panhandle Research and Extension Center and the California companies, trying to inject air into subsurface drip irrigation, where Shin Chow is trying to use a lagoon effluent for a subsurface drip. So let's take a minute or so to talk about the trends and upcoming opportunities. And the USDA NIFA Sustainable Ag System, that's going to probably continue into the near future. There was a little follow-up project. It was submitted with World Wildlife Fund, their Bozeman office, USDA ARS at Minden, North Dakota, School of Mines in South Dakota, and UNL as the lead. It's in the pending stage, but it's not, we'll see how that goes. The Infuse program, the innovations in the Nexus of Food, Energy, and Water program, that's ending. And in fact, they had a special program with China that is also ending. But there are other programs that are still running, the cyber physical systems, smart and connected communities. And then the Smart Farm initiative, what the INR has initiated, is probably has critical mass to compete for any of these programs. The Industry University Cooperative Research Center, that is a program within NSF. Probably the Smart Farm or other initiatives can take some advantage of that. There is preliminary discussion to look for a planning grant on this area. NSF has a program called Advancing Informal STEM Learning. So that is a proposal submitted by Dan Snow last year to NSF. And Corey Forbes has agreed graciously to take a lead. This will be submitted to NSF end of the year or beginning part of January. What are other things there out in the NSF? The Partnership for International Research and Education, especially it's a relatively big 5-6 million type projects. We have work going on in Kazakhstan, Rwanda, and other places, especially Christopher's and Dan. They are focusing quite a bit in Kazakhstan and Rwanda also, Nick and others here. So see if we can capitalize on that. FR is another program. It's a one-to-one match, and UNL is a partner in that Irrigation Innovation Consortium, led by Colorado State. Christopher is the point person from here. So there could be something we can look into this. DOE ARPA-E program, Christopher has a large grant, but also most recently UPNG got a project funded. Actually, it is the first project out of our Smart Farm initiative. The Bureau of Reclamation Office in the regional office in McCook that oversees Nebraska, Kansas, that has helped various NRDs get funding. So probably we could work with them. Other funding, we rely on NET quite a bit, but of course there are a lot of competition for this. The Water Sustainability Fund, and basically we are trying to find the NRDs or other industry as partners if we can work with them. TNC, the Nature Conservancy, they are a strong player in Nebraska, but we are still trying to find if we can partner with them. I think that's pretty much from me for now, and we'll just switch to Dan to give his input.
Jesse, are you moving the slides?
Yeah, Dan, I can advance them if you just give me a cue.
Okay.
Or I can do it actually, because since it's on my share side, it's I'm holding onto the share. I can.
Okay.
Yep.
You want it? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So I think Chittaranjan gave a good overview of our progress since the 5-year review, an external review of the laboratory. As part of that, we recruited Tanya Biswas to fill our laboratory manager role, and she's done an excellent job taking care of the responsibilities and running the Water Sciences Laboratory. Victoria Day was hired just last fall to fill a research technologist, and Victoria's main responsibilities are to run the new ICP-MS. She manages our extensive documentation system, coordinates training on our pesticides, organic contaminants method. And then most recently, probably most of you don't know about this, but Nathan Roddy was recruited just last month to replace Aaron Schultes. Aaron Schultes was our isotope scientist. He finished his PhD last year and left for Ohio. So Nathan is filling that role in the laboratory, and he runs and supervises use of the stable isotope equipment and the noble gas mass spectrometer. One thing that Tanya's really worked on since she started is our training program. We now have a very extensive set of materials and procedures in place for training student interns. Involves online and one-on-one staff training. Last year, she trained about 60 new users, ran through that program. It's definitely had an impact on the number of users that we've had in the University of Nebraska systems. We're going to continue to modify that and try to reduce the amount of staff time that's needed for training, and basically that is translating into online training materials. And then our goal is to really maintain that high level of user success. So next slide. Some of you may have heard we've got some new instrumentation. In 2017, we received funding for a new inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometer. That ICP-MS has been hard at work analyzing samples for trace elements. It has a speciation interface to look at different forms of a trace element like arsenic and selenium. That was co-funded by ARD, Office of Research, DWFI, I think, put in some money for that, but the lion's share of that came from our Nebraska Research Initiative. And then just last year, 2019, we got funding for a new triple quadrupole. That system is equipped with a 2D ultra pressure liquid chromatography interface. So it's really sensitive. It's the highest sensitivity instrument really available for emerging contaminants analysis. We now have methods for a whole wide range of neonicotinoid insecticides and fungicides, and then several groups of emerging pharmaceutical contaminants, including veterinary antibiotics, human antibiotics, some steroid hormones and other personal care products that are being analyzed by that instrument. That funding also came from several sources, including a Nebraska Research Initiative, Ag Research Division, Office of Research and Economic Development, College of Engineering chipped in, and the rest came from the Water Center and the Water Sciences Laboratory Capital Equipment Fund. Last year was really busy, so we got the new LCMS, and we also did some renovation of the building. Really, some of these spaces had not been touched since 1990, so it really needed to be redone. We replaced over $60,000 worth of casework and countertops and floor tile, improved organization and access to the laboratory, updated some electrical and ventilation systems, and removed some unused equipment. So we really have a much better space to do work in, and we're really excited to open up the lab and provide it for tours. Yeah, something else that's going on this year in COVID times is we celebrate our 30th anniversary. The Water Center, Jesse Starita in particular, spent an awful lot of time putting together a lot of really nice articles about the laboratory. I can't believe it that I've actually been at UNL for longer than 30 years, but time flies when you're having fun. We've got a feature article in the Water Current, which I encourage you all to take a look at. We just started this week a series of environmental mass spectrometry webinars that are co-sponsored by Waters Corporation. They're the instrument manufacturer for our triple quadrupole mass spectrometer. We're doing some national meeting promotions at CTAC, AGU, ACS, and hopefully when things settle down a little bit after the first of the year, we'll be able to have our open house that we plan to do this year. So I think that's all I had.
So thanks, Dan. Chittaranjan, can we keep you on board?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can manage the slides. Go ahead. So.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Dan's a mentioning of the water current's a good segue. So we're going to talk in this segment about what we do for public relations and marketing and engagement. My name is Jesse Starita. I'm the public relations and engagement coordinator with the center and spent a number of years at DWFI before that. So I'll make my slides pretty short. Chittaranjan, you can, yep. So just a couple things that we do, and Dan teed this up well. We do a roughly quarterly print and electronic newsletter called the Nebraska Water Current. It's it kind of fluctuates between being a roundup of what's going on in the world of water, both at the university and in state. For some issues, and for other issues, like for the laboratory, we really focused on one particular topic and tried to kind of sink a well and really go deep into that topic. This one that's on the screen now was a kind of highlight of the irrigation history of Nebraska. So happy to take article ideas that you all might have for future editions of that. And then on more of the personal interaction and face-to-face engagement, every year since I believe 1972, we've done a water tour. Well, there's an asterisk by that now, I suppose, but in every normal year we've done it. And last year, about a year ago, we went to the Missouri headwaters, kind of up near Billings, Bozeman, and Yellowstone National Park for a really fun trip that brought almost 50 people to Montana, many of whom came there for the first time. And then continuing on with that theme, I think the third kind of leg of our stool, at least of the public engagement, is really bringing people together for kind of a whole range of water-related conversations, whether it's an annual spring seminar series. And I noticed Martha Rhodes was on this call. She helps facilitate that class. It's an academic credit class, actually, for undergrads and grads at UNL, but it also brings in speakers to talk about water from a range of different perspectives. That happens in January. And then the water conferences that we do, one thing that I guess I'll just mention as in kind of closing is we've tried to really go out of our comfort zone in a sense by just doing the conferences in Lincoln for a number of years. In 2018, we did it in Lincoln, but we had a very regional focus with the Missouri Basin states. And then last year, Chittaranjan alluded to, we went up to Norfolk and had a really nice 2-day conference. Actually, exactly a year ago today, October 9th, we were up there. And then this year, we were supposed to be in Scottsbluff. We did a virtual conference, and we'll try to go back there in the summer of 2021. So with that, I'll turn things over to my colleague, Crystal Powers.
Thanks, Jesse. And I'll keep mine really brief too, just trying to give you all a flavor of what we're trying to offer to help faculty. And so a big portion of what I work with is facilitating partnerships, whether that's between faculty on larger projects as well as with our stakeholders throughout the state. And so some of those are research projects. And so you saw a bunch of those as Chittaranjan talked about. And then there's other things we're doing to build our extension coordination side. So we're really trying to find ways to build that pipeline of high quality research and then taking it out to be adopted in the field, and making partnerships seems to be the best way to do that. So as part of that, we go to a lot of stakeholder meetings and represent campus, provide updates to our stakeholders throughout the state, as well as bring back feedback from them. We've been doing some facilitation of some meetings. If any of you have been at our nitrate initiative meetings, that's one of our big efforts to kind of bring renewed focus to that particular water quality issue. And then there's strategic communications, which is my fancy way of saying there's phone calls and Zoom calls and meetings to bring all this stuff together to try to kind of bring some cohesiveness to our effort across the state. One of those that has been ongoing for quite some time that we host here on campus is our Water Resources Advisory Panel. Rachael Herpel, who's on the call, provides that. I'm getting a warning that I'm unstable, so I'm going to turn off my video real quick. But the goal there is we have key partners across many different sectors represented on that, and they meet twice a year. Here's just a few of the folks. I think last year when I totaled up, there were 50 different organizations who we interacted with in various ways. So, you know, even though we're a small state, there's quite a number of us working on how we manage our water from agriculture to urban areas. So go ahead and go to the next. Oh, so I already said a little bit about this, got ahead of myself, but basically we're trying to do internally as well as externally. So we had a faculty meeting about 1.5 years ago, and that one's been moving slow, but we're planning to kind of bring that back together, because what we did was we decided if we really want to make progress, how can we all collaborate together? So we convened a meeting in January of the leadership of a lot of these different organizations to kind of establish what are the key topics within nitrate we need to address. Those turned into working groups. We just had the third of those working groups met yesterday. So we're doing convening those meetings as well as facilitating and coordinating and communicating between all of these partners, hopefully moving towards having some large collaborative projects coming out of each of those working groups. So go to the next one. And another specific example is up in the Brazil groundwater management area. The 4 NRDs worked with Department of Environmental Quality at the time, now in DEE, to write a plan. And one of the pieces that they identified is they wanted more extension efforts within their area. So Chittaranjan worked with Ron Yoder and INR to get a jointly funded extension educator for that water quality management area. And then that turned into an environmental trust proposal where there are now 3 demonstration farms. We've had our first summer up there on those 3 demonstration farms with a couple more yet to go. So this is kind of a specific example of one of these projects that came together between partners to advance. There's research work going on in that project as well as extension. So I'll stop there and I'll take any questions later on. Thanks.
Thanks. So, hey, Tala, just before you start off, we're a couple minutes after the 1:35, but please do take the 5 or so minutes as you go through your comments or your slides. And probably for this one, if
I have to on share, yeah.
Yeah, we'll switch over the drivers here.
Okay, yep.
Can you see it? All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jesse. And I just want to mention how supportive we are and how we continue to support the efforts from the Water Center and the Water Lab. So my name is Tala Awada, and I am the Associate Dean in the Ag Research Division and also a professor in the School of Natural Resources. I'm not going to take too much of your time. I want to just dive directly into some of the complex challenges that our faculty are interested in. And we've been asked by Jess and by Dan and by Chittaranjan to just highlight some of the issues that we are important to us and how our office is, what kind of resources and support our office is there to provide. So without further ado, here is some of the challenges that our faculty are interested in. Number one is evaluating the current and aspirational agricultural practices, modern agricultural practices, farm of the future, smart farm agricultural practices with respect to many ecosystem services, but including also the water quantity and water quality, which is important for this group. Develop and implement strategies to mitigate the impacts of agriculture on water and on other ecosystem services using what we call the GEMS approach, which is the genotype by environment, by management, by socioeconomic drivers or interactions. And that includes new sensing technologies, engineering technologies, practices such as cover crops, such as in-season manipulation of nutrients, and so on. And of course, selection of educational materials and genetic materials. Large data is big in this space, and that is a part of the bottleneck we have. And how can we incorporate things like AI within the large data and data science? So several of our faculty are working on what we call farm of the future, and there is a language in the Farm Bill related to this year, and really trying to create synergies between field operations, whether it's UAV, robotics, sensing technology, imaging, and so on. And finally, supporting and incentivizing the producers to adopt water stewardship practices, and specifically with reduced cost, increased simplicity of use, and creating labor and operation savings. This is very important for adoption purposes. I encourage everyone to read the new blueprint from USDA for 2020 to 2025, because they have identified 5 big areas that are of priority to them. Number one is a sustainable intensification of agriculture, ag climate adaptation, food and nutrition, value-added products, and ag policy. And I think water quantity and water quality are part of all these 5 priorities that have been identified. Next, I just want to quickly go over how our office supports some of the efforts. We support the teams or team formation to address some of these complex challenges from start to finish, including the formation of the questions to the fundamental research, science and engineering. I work closely with my counterparts from other colleges and with ORED to form teams to help them identify the questions, to find solutions. And in the end, of course, at the bottom, we have the data science that's pretty important, and project management. And really, I encourage you, we have been giving this new book to our faculty, new faculty. It's called The ABC of Research. And we encourage you to, for those new faculty who haven't worked on big teams or want to form big teams, that's a very helpful resource to faculty and to our partners. So how can we assist from our office? Our job is to foster collaborative interaction between faculty, to mentor them and help for team formation and support for these teams. And we also help them together with ORED. We help them with contacting federal governments and other private and public sector, state agencies, and so on. And internally, many of you faculty here at UNL and INR know that we have several internal opportunities to provide seed grants and support faculty through either the strategic or bridge funding, through travel. We have also undergraduate research grants and graduate fellowships. Again, we also have the ARD capacity funds, that provide supports on a competitive basis for multi-state hatch. And I know, Dan, you had one of those in the past. We also have the Max Tennis and the animal science. Also, we manage the commodity board's grants. And finally, our office always is actively working for UNL on promoting and advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, so we can create a really collaborative culture within our institute. And with this, thank you. I know I went very fast, but when I give my colleagues the chance to also contribute to this, I will stop sharing immediately. And why am I not sharing? Stop share. All right. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Tala. I think we'll turn it over to Nathan Meier with ORED.
Thanks, Jesse. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nathan Meier. I'm Assistant Vice Chancellor in the Office of Research and Economic Development. Really just want to thank the Water Center and congratulate them on their efforts to move this retreat online, and thank them for the opportunity to connect with you all today. I took a bit of a different approach from Tala. She's the PowerPoint whiz. I was just maybe going to speak to you conceptually. I think you'll hear a lot of overlap in some of the things. She already highlighted some of the areas where we overlap and work together to support faculty research, but you'll hear more about that in the remarks I want to make. So I also want to start by just, offering a big thanks to all the faculty participants who are on the line today, really making this retreat a priority and setting aside some focused time to engage in research focused dialogue. I think that despite our forced need and what sometimes feel like really struggled attempts to adapt to this new normal in COVID times, there are some really exciting things going on research-wise at UNL. In the last fiscal year, you all, the faculty, set a new record by submitting proposals for research, requesting $831 million. I think that was like a $150 million increase over the prior annual record. So we really hope that's going to lead to some record funding for the excellent work that you all are doing and putting forward in the very near future. And so I just want to say, acknowledge that if you feel like you're thriving or surviving these days, we see your work and your effort. We appreciate it. Hang in there. We're truly grateful for all you do, not just for the institution, but for your respective fields and science. And it's really somewhat intimidating to ask to sit on a panel with Tala, Mark, and Pat. So our two prompts, the first one was, what's the spark that our office can provide to faculty, conducting research? Clearly, if you're affiliated with our institution, you're eligible. We have lots of forms of seed grant funding in the Office of Research and Economic Development that complement those offered by, units like ARD that are in complement to some of those offered by central administration. So we've got lots of seed grant funding. There's a deadline at 5 p.m. today. If you don't know how to find information about our seed grant opportunities, let me know. We also feel like we have pretty strong, proven proposal development support in the Office of Research and Economic Development. So we have a strong team of general proposal writing experts, but if you need connections with some technical experts, you need some subject matter reviewers, you need some agency specific consultants, we can make those linkages and connections for you as well. Like the Water Center does, like ARD does, and like both the College of Engineering and Arts and Sciences, we can help you connect with other collaborators on this campus or beyond. If you're looking for folks to round out your research teams, you have questions, you have gaps in knowledge or expertise or experience, we can help you fill those. As you heard Tala say, we're happy, we love providing assistance when you are looking to connect with and pitch ideas to program officers, not just at the federal agencies or in Washington, D.C., but also in industry or with private foundations. You know, Dan highlighted in his update on the Water Center and the Water Sciences Laboratory some of the new research instrumentation. We really want to make sure that people have access to the latest and greatest research instrumentation, research infrastructure. So if there are needs you have that way that aren't being met, Dr. Jen Nelson in our office can help you think about ways to find funding for those things. And something that's been really exciting to me the last few years at UNL, and this is in partnership with the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources, the Executive Vice Chancellor's office, in our office, ORED, we have a position where we have a colleague now who's dedicated to helping faculty, once they put in the good work, right, they have a record of excellence and impact, going out and getting some recognition, being nominated or applying for external honors and awards, to not only just feel good about the work and the impact you're doing over time, but also to raise your visibility, because that also helps when you're positioned, when you're visible in your community, that can be a boon, that can be a competitive advantage when you're going to apply for external funding. The other prompt was, you know, how can centers like the Water Center complement our goals for collaborative research? So I think you probably all well know that this campus has some pretty audacious goals for research growth. We have to grow toward $450 million in annual research expenditures by 2025. Chancellor Green said we're not taking our foot off the gas. And, you know, just so you know, last fiscal year, our research expenditures were at $318 million. So in my humble opinion, to close that gap, I think we have to all level up and start to do some things differently. I'm not speaking for everyone, I don't want to generalize, but I think largely on the research side of things, we often are more reactive than proactive. So in my opinion, if you're waiting for an RFP to drop, you're waiting for a solicitation to drop before you start thinking about a response, before you start thinking about a team, you're probably too late. So I would posit that we need to switch sides of the ball and we need to get off research defense around this place. We need to start playing research offense. We need to open up some space and create some opportunities so we can help you, the faculty, you know, our research leaders really find the resources that can enable and support your biggest and best ideas. And I think at the end of the day, this really boils down to probably working a bit more strategically than tactically. So some specific ways I'll share for really quickly that I think you all can help us achieve campus growth goals. First, I'd say, let's do some strategic planning around your research goals and your funding targets. I think in today's competitive environment, by and large, for bigger opportunities, the short game is mostly played out. That's not to say that there's not going to be short-term or emerging opportunities. We obviously see those all the time. We've seen them in recent months. But I think for the really sort of big standard complex projects, the big standard funding opportunities, we probably need to be thinking and planning 3, 5, 10 years out, not starting 6 months prior to submission. So we'd love to sit down with you, hear your ideas, developing a funding roadmap, and then work with the colleges and the centers to think about ways to operationalize and execute that plan. You know, as Tala mentioned, this idea of connecting with agency reps, I think this is really critical. So I think we need to think more strategically, be more bold in how we position our individual faculty and our projects with funders. If you're submitting a big proposal as a cold call, that's to say if you haven't socialized your idea, your project, your team with an agency, with national program leaders prior to submission, I'd say you're probably at a competitive disadvantage. So when you're pursuing these big projects, I'd really encourage you to think about a adopting a proposal development process mentality instead of just focusing on proposals as a product. There are lots of strategies, not enough time to go into them in detail here today, but there are lots of strategies we can adopt. I think that we can help increase competitiveness in non-technical ways, but that can pay off with some big dividends during the review process and beyond. We really want the agencies to begin to think of our faculty research leaders as influencers and sort of the go-to experts when they're looking to set their priorities, not just as, reactive proposers. As I said earlier, third, let's celebrate and recognize research excellence more systematically. I talked to you about the position that the administrative units, have invested in to increase external recognitions for faculty. So if you need help nominating a colleague who has a record of research excellence and impact in teaching or extension outreach, let us know. Or if you want to explore, awards that you as an individual might be eligible for or competitive for, my colleague Patrina Suter would be happy to connect with you. And I think the final thing I would say, I'll sort of appropriate the words of former Vice Chancellor Prempal. Don't be shy. If you have big ideas, if you have dreams, hopes, something we haven't covered, reach out and let us know. We're always happy to have a conversation about how we can help. So that's what I had to share today, Jesse.
Okay, thank you, Nathan, for such a affirming and positive remarks. And faculty, you've got 3 hours to submit your seed grant, so go sharpen your pencils. Next up, we're going to introduce Mark Riley. Mark is with the College of Engineering here at UNL.
All right, thank you very much, Jesse. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing to be going after Nathan and Tala there. They both had some wonderful ideas, and I'm going to not spend too much time going over the same sorts of things, because one of the key points I wanted to convey is very similar to Nathan's perspective, and I think it really is representative of the conversation that's happening on our campus, and especially amongst leadership and people in roles like what Tala, what Pat, what Nathan and I have, that we're talking about how do we align our campus to go after these grand challenges? How do we become more competitive at larger funding opportunities, especially from federal agencies? And a key part of that Nathan touched on is, if we're going after these center type activities without the proper preparation, we certainly are at a disadvantage. So I'd like to challenge the group on this call and with an opportunity that is we really ought to be thinking about what should we be doing in 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and start building systematically and strategically within those areas. And I think our campus has done that particularly well with the faculty hires over the last 5 to 10 years. But I think we need to take another look at where we are in terms of the strengths and weaknesses, especially in the space of water on our campus, because we have tremendous activities going on in this space all across our campus. And I think we tend to get a little bit into our own. In many cases, people talk about them as silos in the water area. Maybe they're wells, as opposed to being a silo. But within activities from engineering, I just want to point out that there's quite a lot of folks who are doing work in the water space, and a lot of people connected with the Water Center at this time. And many of the folks are on this call right now. But I think, to address the first point about what is the spark that we bring, I think a key part of that is helping to facilitate conversations amongst the faculty to recognize where do they have shared opportunities, where do they have shared interests, and where can they build partnerships. And part of that really is based on having complementary skills, but certainly another part is having compatible work styles, compatible personalities, finding people that you like to work with. There's so much water activity on our campus. There's many opportunities that people can take. So I want to highlight just a couple of recent projects that are going on that have received some publicity, but I think they set a standard for the kinds of things we really ought to be looking at. So within civil and environmental engineering, there've been a couple of projects led by Shannon Bartelt Hunt and Julie and Megan Kelly. Megan's not in civil engineering, but looking at wastewater monitoring, specifically to be able to track the spread of COVID. And I think it's a very forward-looking approach that addresses an incredibly timely concern, but applies new technologies that really benefit from the strengths of activities that we have on our campus. So I think we've seen a number of other institutions applying similar kinds of approaches for monitoring directly on their campuses. The University of Arizona has been doing this for a number of months, and they've highlighted early stage outbreaks of COVID on their campus and been able to repurpose resources to test people to be able to prevent spread. So the concept of applying technology to be able to impact the public is enormous. And I think in the water space, that's one of the places where there's tremendous opportunity. So there also is a lot of activity within chemical and biomolecular engineering in the water space. A number of faculty are working on different schemes for water purification and electrodialysis and different unique kinds of membrane systems. I want to point out the work of Shimak Najati and Mona Bavarian, and also Chris Cornelius. So those two departments, civil and environmental and chemical and biomolecular, you would tend to think of as the logical ones to partner in water, but there's a number of other faculty activities that do connect in. And in some respects, it's more like on the technology side than it is necessarily on the squarely within water. But there's lots of activities in wireless networking that's coming out of computer science. John Veron has a large project that involves a whole host of folks on our campus. Swataramak is a strong component of all of that, but they're looking at wireless networking for water systems, both from wastewater monitoring, but also how to get the right information for better management of center pivots. We also have a number of folks who are interested in the built environment and looking at how natural disasters and floods and related issues impacts structures and utilization of the built environment. So there's a lot of activity, again, in civil engineering from Christine Whittick and Ricky Wood, but also in the Durham School of Architectural Engineering and Construction. One other area I want to point out is folks doing work in modeling. There's a lot of work in modeling, both at the molecular level, looking at other ways to characterize turbulent flow, but also from hydrological sciences. And then also certainly the AI and machine learning areas. I think there's a huge need on our campus for more practitioners of AI and machine learning. And we've been fortunate to build some of those skills within electrical and computer engineering. And there also are a lot of interests and skills being brought to the table from computer science. So one last thing I want to bring up just is, one opportunity folks may not be familiar with is within the bioprocess development facility, there is a water for injection system. So it's incredibly high purity water that's available on campus, and that would be available for people to use if there's interest in that space. So just to connect back into what Nathan had mentioned, I think the key thing we need to be looking at is how to think big, how to go after these grand challenges. And it's not necessarily just stepping up to the plate. It's building partnerships in ways we haven't done before, and then cobbling partnerships with partnerships, more in a fractal based nature, if you will, to be able to go after activities that have broader impacts than we already have. So thank you very much for the time. I'm very happy to be here and support the Water Center. I think you folks are doing phenomenal work, and we thank you for all that you do.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark, for those remarks. Last but not least on our panel is Pat Dussault, and Pat is in the Department of Chemistry and also has an administrative role in Arts and Science. And I know that he's used the Water Sciences Lab in the past, so he's very familiar with the work that the lab does. So Pat, over to you.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. I found it amusing that Nathan seemed worried about following Tala and Mark and me, and I'm actually thought that maybe I was brought in as the comic relief at the end of Tala and Nathan and Mark. So we'll see if I can keep up to the standard they've set. And let me, got the classic problem of too many files open. So I am going to share a few PowerPoints, and idea is, I think to some degree, my college, Arts and Sciences, is perhaps not as tightly tied to the Water Center as for example, INR or College of Engineering. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I thought maybe also that a lot of people maybe not quite as familiar with Arts and Sciences. So what I wanted to do is, and also I should probably just put this in the presentation view, which would be good. Am I showing? Okay, thank you. So the idea is, where to go? Oh, that's interesting. See if we're not doing a glitch here. Let's do it this way. Well.
I think your slides are at the end. You can just go backwards.
Yeah, I don't know. That is interesting, isn't it? Oh, I see what you did. I see what you're right. Thank you, Mark. See, I said comic relief. I called it. CAS is a big beast in a large number of schools. I mean, what schools is in a structure like natural resources, but so in our case, it's biological sciences and the new School of Global Integrated Sciences. A lot of departments, a lot of centers, and a lot of programs. Over 500 faculty and a couple hundred staff, a lot of majors and a lot of minors, a lot of students. I'm going to talk briefly. We have some units with very strong ties to the Water Center and vice versa. And I'll mention them, and I'll mention some that have some ties. And I'm going to mention a couple that I think could have ties and I think could be of mutual advantage to them and to the center. You're familiar with a number of our faculty from Earth and Atmospheric Sciences, and I think have been active collaborators and work in a space that is very familiar to the members of the center, including Aaron Hocker, a new faculty member in EAS, who's actually was a former research associate in the center, and Sherry Fritz and Clint Rowe and Mark Anderson. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, but just there's a real core of expertise there, but I think you know them well. Some of the other units, and I should have put School of Biological Sciences in kind of a special thing here, but for brevity, Carrie Weber, who's done a lot of work on like chemistry or biochemistry or biology of the alkaline lakes and some other areas, is I think well known, and Chad Brassel, who does mathematical modeling of interactions related to microbes and their geological interactions. Rebecca Lai in my department is a sensor chemist, electrochemical sensor, and has I think interacted indirectly with the center through collaborations with Carrie, but would be a good resource. I know there have been past interactions with poli-sci and policy implications, and through Sarah Michaels. And I know Patrice McMahon is listed as a center affiliate, and these are people who are experts on the intersection of science and policy. And Arts and Sciences shares environmental studies as one of our majors. As environmental studies bridges into many of the colleges on the campus. And you've actually had Gene Cahan, a philosopher, on affiliated with the center in areas like water security. So this is, this gives some idea. This list alone gives an idea of kind of some of the diversity of units within the college, but also some of the diversity of faculty perspectives. When I looked at this and I thought about where were things that neither of us had thought a lot about, I thought about a couple, and I actually reached out to some chairs and asked some questions about this to say, what are areas that, given the interest in water and water usage and water science and water policy, where are areas of the college that are being relatively lightly tapped right now? And a couple came up that I thought were really interesting. And one comes out of ethnic studies and history, which would be an area that I think you would maybe think of as naturally far afield, but actually about, basically how poor communities and those of color are impacted by environmental issues related to water access and water usage. And out of communication studies, basically the issue of, how water relates to health concerns and how water relates to livability for residents and things like that. And I know that when you interact with, if you're interacting with NSF as a funding agency, a few years back, NSF went through a major push, and a lot of us in the basic sciences struggled with it a little bit to basically look for opportunities to incorporate the social sciences, for example, writ broadly, into proposals in terms of to have a human dynamic in, not only to talk about the impacts related on people, but to actually have people or have investigators as part of the proposal that could help in framing those questions related to those impacts. And so I think that my field has certainly also not plumbed this to the extent it could, but if there were interests from the center in finding individuals at UNL who could be partners in major initiatives and bring some of this kind of expertise to the table that we don't always normally think about, I'm very happy to help with that. Similarly, if you're looking around for people just with particular talents in the sciences as well, I'm happy to try to help you with that navigation. I'm going to be guilty. I'll throw a plug for myself in at the end. But I'm a native Californian, and I raised avocados as when I was younger on a family farm. And if you want to talk about a crop that has water issues embedded in it, avocados are high on that list. And that list would be Colorado water issues. I've been at UNL for 32 years and done a lot of things. Like Johnny Cash, I've been everywhere, man. I've done a lot of things, but my major interest is in organic chemistry broadly writ. I like to make molecules, and so if you have interest in making molecules as targets, as markers or whatever, I'm there. But I also have a really strong interest in anything that you would call reactive oxygen species and active oxygen chemistry. So ozone, hydrogen peroxide, singlet oxygen, hydroxyl radical, and something I would be interested at some point in talking to some people about is we think we may have a new way of activating hydrogen peroxide for hydroxyl radical production under relatively efficient means. But anyway, so that's enough about me. But I just think the college is a big place. I'd like the college to know more about the center. And I think maybe I'd like the center to know a little bit more about the college. And I would be really happy to be the intermediary in that discussion. So I think with that, I will take some questions if there are any.
Great. Thank you, Pat. That was far from comic relief. That was a lot of good practical things that we could follow up on. And I see Rachael is on the call, and maybe even a few faculty fellows to pursue in the future for Water for Food. But thanks to everybody on that panel just for really obviously spending some time thinking about what you wanted to present and tying it into the theme that we have here. We are just a little behind schedule, but I don't think it's any big sweat. So we're going to move to a breakout room, and these are all, fingers crossed, they're pre-assigned. So you should just sort of end up in a group of people that answered the question of what do you want to get out of this retreat in a similar way. So hopefully you have some synergy right off the bat. And each group, just as a reminder to the conversation leaders, each group has a leader, and if you need me to send out that cheat sheet again, let me know. But there's a couple of conversational prompts. And I think with that, why don't we, I'll just set it that we come back in about 10 minutes. So we'll go into the breakout room now. Thanks. A couple people I know still need assignments, so we'll work on that. Let's see.
Jesse, I can't assign breakout room since I'm only a co-host. I think the host only can.
Okay, thank you. We're getting close to having everybody in one, so.
Okay.
Michael, okay. Okay, a couple more people. Okay, I think we're all.
I ended up in the wrong room, so I came back.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. I think, sorry, that was kind of a blur because there was about, for some reason, 18 or so folks who were unassigned, but here we are. We are in room 3, and Trisha, let me just get her in here, apologies. Trish, are you with us?
Yes, my computer died and then I had trouble getting back in.
Okay,
I'm just listening while I'm in here working.
Okay, no worries. Let me, Crystal and Rajneesh and Sahila, I'm just gonna get my little cheat sheet up here.
Don't worry about me.
Well, this is a very stacked deck of NWC staff, so we get to have a firsthand knowledge of things. I don't know if
Well,
Sahila and
in 2 though. I was going to be the moderator for 2.
okay, yeah, let me see.
I ended up in 3 instead of in 2.
Okay, well, I think we'll just have to go with it. I don't know if I can change it.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just have to stick with this. Any chance that you guys could turn on your video? If not, that's fine. It just makes it a little more interactive. Awesome. Rajneesh and Sahila, can you all hear me? Okay. Chat. Just gonna send him a message. Well, anyway, we'll use this time as good as we can. I think what happened was it kind of went haywire because we had like 59 people assigned and there was about 40 or so on the call. So it didn't quite line up the way I was expecting, but I don't know. What do you guys think about the question of, and Crystal, I think you brought this up and I'd be interested to hear your perspective on the, and hopefully everybody will have talked about this, the how do you like want to meet going forward, and in terms of also how often and what platform, and especially since you're probably one of the only staff member who's actually convened something that's been in person,
Well, I'm biased towards, I think face-to-face. Well, okay, for certain goals for meetings, I think face-to-face is far superior. For information sharing, we may never, for seminars, maybe there's never a reason to go back to face-to-face. And so I guess I'm open to having a hybrid, because with our seminars, we actually get larger participation virtually, because it's, then people don't have the time and expense of travel. And so people from across the state or with the DWFI across the globe can participate for essentially no cost. So I think for pure information sharing, and we can even do some fairly decent discussions via Zoom. There's other things like even though we're trying to do some networking here. Networking is very difficult on Zoom. The ones we did face-to-face were for brainstorming. Mm-hmm. And so that's very interactive. And it's hard when you get lots of people that need to talk quickly, Zoom doesn't work well for that. So I particularly think for small working groups, like under 15, there's plenty of large enough rooms that we can meet face to face and keep social distancing, but yet get that interactive piece. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks for that. One kind of related thing, I was reading an article in the paper this morning about the Board of Regents. And there, I don't know if you all have been down there, but like there where they usually meet is in the bunker. I think of it as in Varner Hall. Like it's real, they got all the radio equipment and stuff for people to dial in. But they moved it to the conference space at NIC so that they could accommodate, they could socially distance, but then I know in yesterday's meeting, quite a few students showed up and they gave some testimony. And so to accommodate all those people, they, you know, just moved it to NIC. So I do think, I agree. I mean, I think I'd like to get back to at least doing some, as long as everybody felt that there were precautions being taken, you know?
Well, in all 3 of ours, we offered virtual option, which from an organizer standpoint, I really feel for the teachers having to do the hybrid teaching because it makes it a lot more complex to try to make sure that everybody can hear everyone else. But that hybrid model kind of gave us the best of both worlds because the few folks who, I would say a third of them were distance related, you know, so they were from Scottsbluff or they were from Chittaranjan. And then some of the others were, they personally weren't comfortable with meeting yet, or some of them were their organizations still have a policy that they won't meet. So we did do the hybrid piece and it worked. We had different technical challenges, like I said, from a convener standpoint, it makes it much more complex, but as you know, from organizing this little group, so.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just things you have to think about that kind of flow naturally when you're all in person. Trish, I wanted to get you in if you wanted to share anything. I'm probably gonna close the room up pretty soon just so we stay on target.
I mean, I can go either way. I agree with Crystal on the seminars that, you know, we might be able to keep those more virtual, but at least have space where the actual students can come and watch it if they want to. I know the auditorium is going to still be available, for example. However, they're not going to allow the public in the Hardin Hall, at least not at this time. That could change, you know, by January. So, but the one nice thing, you know, if we do the seminars virtually like that, that's going to save, you know, some expense on the budget because we're not going to have to pay travel and lodging and, you know, other expenses, you know, to bring those out of town speakers in.
Yeah.
And everything.
Yeah, I know.
So that's one bonus.
No, both of those are good points. Yeah, Martha had asked that we at least look into having students have a place so they could
right, and I do know Jackie has it reserved. So if Martha wants to meet with them on the off weeks in the auditorium, it is going to be available to her. So she does not have to get, you know, worry about a smaller room at Hardin Hall like they usually would do. They used to meet in like 207, for example. So they would be able to continue using the auditorium and they can space themselves to do the class discussion part of it.
Nice.
So that's still available to her, but that has to be her call and what she wants to do.
Okay.
But I think she also needs to keep an open mind, you know, that some students might be there in person and some might want to participate by Zoom for the discussion. So I don't know if either of you have taken that Zoom training that Kate sent information out on.
Hey, Trish, sorry, I don't mean to be rude. I'm gonna hit the close room button just so we stay on track here. Okay, good. I figured it gave people.
Gives them a warning, right?
I like that it's not like a guillotine. You're cut off.
It gives them a warning. I learned that yesterday. It gives them like a countdown. Oh.
Oh, cool. Wow, it's kind of fun to see people just appear.
Jesse, towards the end, we see a lot of our other collaborators from industry and agencies there. Maybe if you can, at the end, give them a chance to tell who they are, that will be helpful.
Thank you. Thanks, Chittaranjan, and we still have a couple seconds. Ron, are you okay if we started your remarks just a little after 2:30?
That should work fine.
Okay, thank you. I don't think it'll be much after, but so we get a buffer. Well, let's see. Yeah, I think most of us are all back here. So I wanted to bring on board, and first of all, thank you for participating in our first ever Water Center virtual retreat breakout room. I hope it worked out good for everyone. I wanted to bring on board my colleague and the Water Center's Assistant Director, Rachael Herpel, who is just gonna try to suss out maybe a couple of the key points or even a overlapping theme that a few of the groups may have had. And so I don't yet see her on my screen. There she is. So Rachael, do you wanna, you can call on some of the leaders to offer up their thoughts.
Sure. So I guess you're as good as any, Jesse. How did it go with networking, the networking group? Yeah.
That was a ping pong, nice. No, I'll keep mine short, but we had a pretty good talk. It was actually a lot of Water Center staff, and one thing we just sort of focused on was, what's the future of our engagement in terms of like faculty events, since this is predominantly a faculty event, and how do we want to meet going forward? And what I meant by that question is also like frequency and format. So we identified there being a common desire to do some in-person programming in a way that's safe for people. Crystal has actually done that already a couple times in the last few weeks with her nitrate meetings. And we just talked about how we could get creative, and if we usually met like in the conference room at DWFI and that's too confined, is there space in the NIC, like a breakout room or one of their spaces where people can spread out a little bit?
Is any Crystal or anybody from the other group that want to add to that?
I wasn't able to make it into room 2. So if someone else from room 2 wants to share, please do.
Well, I think that's a thing with your groups and having participated in the nitrate working groups, is that the in-person meetings have been valuable and nice, and you've seen the pictures of us in our masks. So, but virtual is very safe. I think this has worked very well, Jesse. So a hybrid approach, I think, going forward is something that we're committed to. So going on, in the interest of time, going on to the research breakouts. Nick?
Yeah, thank you. So we were only just getting warmed up. We had a great discussion. And what I'll do is I'll pass on actually what I think was the most important. I took notes that I'll pass on to the organizers later, but the cleverest thing that we discussed and I thought we heard was the role that Nebraska Water Center can play through its convening capacity of knowing stakeholders all around the state and being able at a very early stage in grant writing to bring them in and introduce faculty to them. You know, when you look at large projects, there's always this need to have external stakeholder committees to understand what needs on the ground are. And so the suggestion was to be able to call on NWC earlier in the process so that faculty could get feedback earlier and they could be connected to those key stakeholders earlier in the process and get more information from them that way.
Yep, I would say in our group that was the same thing, that earlier the better, kind of picking up on what the panel was saying, this strategic early groups, getting faculty together, all of that. So going on to the last two groups with focus on funding, either Dan or Chittaranjan, do you want to speak for your groups? Dan?
Yeah, I'll go first. We kind of got a late start. It took a while to find the questions. I finally found the questions. And we basically just talked about the funding opportunities that we should consider. There are great opportunities for research faculty to partner with community colleges. And coming from a research institution, we don't normally think about that. But Nebraska has a great community college system that could be used to partner on grants related to STEM, science literacy, and vocational training. Our system is good for building capacity in vocations and professions supporting agriculture and natural resources. And they have facilities that we could take advantage of. The one at Northeast Community College, for example, has a 500-acre farm outside of Norfolk that could be used to develop vocational training curriculum. Along with that, there are health sciences professions at community colleges that are also going to be bring substantial advantage to proposals. And then the other comment, funding is everywhere. We just have to know where to look. Industry is also something that we need to learn to take advantage of. They can definitely contribute to projects that would benefit research and development. There are programs in USDA, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, National Science Foundation. We just have to keep in mind as research faculty that clients need specific products and that we have to find the right partner then to leverage those connections.
Great, thank you, Dan. Yeah, I guess the spirit of the day is there's a lot of opportunities. It's getting organized and having the will and time and focus to be able to work on it. So, Chittaranjan?
Yeah, our group was probably a smaller group, but we ended up with partners from federal agencies, USDA and US Geological Survey. Basically, the congratulation, one thing is that it's new news to me also that Steve Peterson is now the director of the USGS Water Sciences Center at Lincoln, Nebraska. So we are looking for a new collaboration. They are looking for people to recruit to permanent position as well as student interns. So that was a good thing. And Dan Miller, who is here in the campus, he already is engaged strongly with many of us and the students from various departments or faculty research groups work in his lab, and there are probably others in his collegial capacity. They are also similarly involved. So we see a strong collaboration with both the entities. Probably we should be looking into a few other entities here in town, like the NRCS lab in Lincoln. They work with some faculty members. In fact, the DWFI in his recent grant with the soil carbon, he's partnering with them. We should be looking at them also. And we have been fortunate enough to get a cooperative agreement with the plant physiology lab in Beltsville, which allowed us to recruit 2 postdocs for them. So one of the postdocs was in that group also. And finally, Dr. Saurabh Pandey, who is here, he's linked to USGS strongly, and he's also involved with faculty mentoring at UNL. He's here part-time. So we are looking at him helping the faculty as well as a little bit more engagement with the USGS, particularly Steve's group here. So we can see how this goes. So back to you.
Great.
Thanks. Thank you, Rachel, for doing that. Thanks, Chittaranjan. I know we're right at 2:30 and we're going to go just a little bit over. So I hope everyone can just take a few more minutes. Really quickly, before Dr. Yoder gives us a few things to consider for concluding remarks, we would be remiss if we didn't at least give the opportunity for some of our non-faculty partners on the call to just briefly introduce yourself, your title, and your affiliation. I mean, you all really are pretty essential to the work that we do, especially when we're talking about getting out in the field and doing projects that benefit the state. And maybe I'll just turn it over to Michael and Leah up at Northeast Community College.
Well, I'll go first. So I'm Leah Barrett. I'm the president of Northeast. I've been here in Nebraska just since January, so it's been quite an interesting welcome. But it was nice to be invited. Michael suggested that I join you today. I just think there's so many opportunities to partner, and I look forward to getting to know you all better and learn more about what you're doing, because the work is so important in our world. So thank you for all that you do, and if you can think of ways where you can partner with our faculty and our students to support the work that we do here in Northeast Nebraska, please feel free to let Michael or I know. So thanks for letting me be here with you today.
Thanks, Leah. Michael?
Again, thank you. Michael Lechner, been at Northeast Community College since 1996. I have 2 degrees from Kasner. I teach Ag Econ, Ron Hansen's old course, and I teach an international ag course that's equivalent to 282. Kind of an odd combination. I also have a master's in counseling. So I teach an ag ed course, 102, equivalent to year 102 down in Kasner also. Before I came to Northeast, I worked for UNL with Charlie Shapiro, Bill Kranz, started the AquaFest program more than 25 years ago at Wayne State. I just want to say thank you. Thank you, folks, for all you do for water and for what the things that water does. There is no substitute. Thank you.
Anybody else just like to introduce themselves? Ryan, you're a frequent collaborator of ours.
Yeah, Ryan from Department of Environment and Energy. We're currently busy with a structural reorganization, and we're moving in 2 weeks, so we're busy. But other than that, yeah, I think I was telling the group earlier that, you know, we're trying to get into some of the social dynamics of the science. So that's a good thing, and that, you know, seems to be where some of the interest is from funding and collaboration. So we're excited to help collaborate on some different projects, and thanks for the opportunity today.
Jesse, if I may, real briefly, I am not faculty, but I've really loved what I've seen today. Cody Bailey, Director of Product Management for Ranke Manufacturing. We are the manufacturers of mechanized irrigation systems, and one of the drivers for us is to bring further innovation to the industry toward goals such as water reduction or water optimization methods and other things surrounding that. I was telling our group earlier that one of my tasks at the moment is exploring the sustainability world. What a messy world at the moment, but however, lots of hope and things to do is what I'm gleaning. So I really appreciate the tidbits. I also told the group the little tip to the USDA's blueprint. I had not read that yet. In fact, I've got it downloaded, so I'll read that next. But those are the things that I appreciate from all of you and the influence that you have. So thank you for letting me be here.
I see Larkin also there.
Thanks. I'm here. Half of the hat that I'm wearing today is in the Kasner Dean's office, so maybe that's what I'll
put a plug in for with a few words that we're quite interested in. My role there is with experiential education. And so a lot of what you're doing has some obvious ways that grad students participate, but we're trying to get more opportunities for internships and externships for them, but also for our undergraduate students. So I was really interested in some of the things that you were saying earlier, that how the center's working with scholarships and helping with recruiting. And after those students get here, I guess we're quite interested in engaging with your teams to make sure that if we can help support and facilitate any of those experiences that would help you as well, that would be excellent. There's a new, I guess just to put that in context, by one of the 2025 initiatives from our Chancellor is to have students have an experiential learning portfolio requirement when they graduate. And so we're going to be looking for things that students can do to plug into a portfolio because we want to get them out the door, obviously, but we want to make sure that they can document what they did and then reflect on why they did it as well and how it can be useful to future employers. Thanks.
Jesse, can I make a couple comments? Lee Orton?
Yeah, just quickly, Lee. Yep.
I wear 5 different hats, so I have a lot of association with lots of different water project activities. And many of the things I've heard today, I've known a little bit about, but I learned more as well. There are also a lot of faculty names that were mentioned that could easily be a part of our successful Water Leaders Academy. So I learned a lot from that standpoint. I want to say thank you to the university and all the private sector people that helped make our programs work successfully. So I appreciate having an opportunity to have been at the table here today. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Lee. And thank you, everyone. I don't want to cut people off, but also want to respect people's time. And I think I'll turn it over.
I think Becky was wanting to introduce herself.
Oh, okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. I'm Becky Sherman. I am the statewide person with Extension for domestic water and on-site wastewater. Do a lot with education of the professionals from both of those industries. And then as well as just answering questions from across Nebraska on people's private wells and their on-site wastewater systems. So I'm excited to have been invited to this and hope to be able to have further collaboration because I think it's important that we all have the same message and are able to spread that message throughout the state.
Thank you, Becky. And just to pick up on one thing that Becky, I know, submits content to water.unl.edu. It's a great resource, kind of an extension-led effort of the university to post information and publications about water. So if you're not familiar with that website, it's something you can bookmark and refer to. So I think I'll turn it over to Dr. Yoder to kind of be our cleanup hitter for this 90 or so minutes. And Ron, you're welcome to share your screen if you do have some slides.
Just comments, Jesse. I appreciate all of you that have joined today here. The external partners and the internal members of the faculty and staff of the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources and University at large. Those of you that know me know that professionally, water is my home. So it's always enjoyable to join this sort of a conference retreat. My professional background as an undergraduate was in hydrology and water resources and doing flood studies as a co-op engineering student. And then I guess you might say I saw the light and detoured into agricultural water management in my graduate degrees, and that's where I've worked much of my career. So water is very central to me professionally. Obviously, in my current role, I have to be a little careful about not appearing to be too water-centric. But among friends here, I think I can be more relaxed about how important water is, and certainly in Nebraska. I see behind Becky there in her photograph, Nebraska Water. And water is, as we all know, very central to Nebraska's economy in many different ways, and also to the enjoyment of the natural environment in Nebraska. I came into Nebraska in 2004, which was at getting toward the latter stages of big debates about water quantity, which revolved in LB 962, which put some regulation and some additional attention on how water quantity was dealt with. Now, fast forward 16 years, water quality is very much in the conversation. So about 2 years ago, we began thinking about how we might bring together all of the broad resources, not only in the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources, but across the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and across the entire University of Nebraska system. So it was given to me to think about this, how we might engage across the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources as a beginning, and then serve as the anchor for all things water across UNL. And of course, when you say that, you obviously begin to think about the Nebraska Water Center. And Chittaranjan and I have worked closely together ever since he arrived. I think he said it was 7 years ago, and that's pretty amazing when I think about it. It only seems like yesterday, Chittaranjan. So he and I have done a lot of talking. If you recall, some of you, we had an all-comers meeting back in March of 2019 where we talked about what are the issues in water in Nebraska, and water quality came up a lot, related to public health, related to nutrient management, along with numerous other issues that seem to be, in most people's reading of the situation, very much front and center. So I've spent a lot of time doodling on the back of envelopes and back of scrap paper with Venn diagrams and with arrows and circles and clusters, and could never get really very comfortable with anything. But ultimately, I ended up realizing that the Venn diagram, which has crops in one circle and water in another circle, and then where they intersect, that's a pretty large intersection. When you begin talking about water quality in Nebraska, and you just begin to talk about nutrient loading, of course, you can also talk about emerging contaminants. You can talk about crop protectants in the water. You can't really talk about addressing water quality issues over a large geographic part of Nebraska without talking about crops. So, cut to the chase, Venn diagram, crops in one circle, water in the other circle, and a very significant overlap in the center of that Venn diagram. So we then began to talk about forming a crops and water team. And I don't know what that means, but you all and all of our internal stakeholders and our external stakeholders are going to help us decide what that is. So I want to point you toward a meeting on the 27th of October in the afternoon. Invitations have gone out to those individuals who have interacted with us closely, that is the internal team. But we're going to also put that link out there for anybody, and I'll work with Chittaranjan to get this up on the Nebraska Water Center site. So anybody that would like to join us the 27th of October in the afternoon is certainly welcome. We want your input. We are beginning to, down a what I think will be a fairly long path, certainly several years, to begin to bring together our considerable expertise in water, in crops. And along with that Venn diagram, I was very uncomfortable with what we might call this. I asked a lot of people. We talked about a lot of things. Just to keep it simple, we continue to talk about crops and water, but it's really more than that. And I finally became comfortable with at least a working title of water and integrated cropping systems. That sort of makes a decent acronym, WICS, WICS. But more importantly, I realized as I was talking, or as I was working on this, that the and between water and between integrated cropping systems is very important, because water is of itself a very large subject. And I did not want, and I do not want, as we go forward with this considerable effort that we're going to begin to engage in, I did not want anybody in the water realm to feel like they were not part of the conversation. And the integrated cropping systems likewise. Anybody in the crops area will be engaged. Now, the final thing I want to say is that this is not a team in the sense, I'm a baseball fan. This is not a team in the sense of the manager fills out the lineup card and you have somebody in all 10 positions. This is a team in the sense of we're going to enhance our internal communication initially. As soon as we get ourselves organized, we're going to enhance our external communication, and we're going to plug gaps, if you will, with some modest resources that we've set aside to do this. So I've already taken up more time probably than Jesse anticipated I would. If you're interested, October 27th in the afternoon, look for a link on the Nebraska Water Center site, and we will get into many more details about what we're thinking about. This is a large effort, so it's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to happen suddenly. We're going to start at the core of what I've talked about, which is crops and water, managing nutrients, precision agriculture, soil health, water quality related to public health, and then we're going to grow outward from that, engaging as many of you as are interested and engaging partners that we probably don't even know they are potential partners at this point, but we will find them. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Jesse.
Great, thank you, Ron. Thanks so much. And we'll be happy to help promote that meeting later this month on our website and in communications materials. We've taken up more of your time, but I guess I'll just give Chittaranjan the opportunity to have the last word here.
Jesse, thank you. As always, I forget to introduce myself, so I think there is no need for me to introduce again. Everybody knows I'm Chittaranjan Ray, and thank you all very much for spending the time with us. And also, we'll have this material available as recording, correct, Jesse? And
correct.
Hopefully, we'll come up with some of the key findings and try to work with the partners as well as the 3 deans and the overhead office, especially with Meier and his colleagues, to see how we go from here. Basically, as he said, that we have to be in the offensive line, not as a defensive players here. So how we really take into that step, I think as Ron mentioned, the crop and water hub is forming. This might be that offensive push might come from this group will be forming in the next 2-3 months. So thank you all and have a good weekend and enjoy the weather before it gets cold next week. Thanks.